Welcome back to the channel, and imagine this: you're in the market for a sub 250 gram, sub 400 pound compact AI tracking fitted in your pocket DJI drone. Which one do you choose, the Neo 2 or the Flip? In this video I'm going to help you make that decision by running through a number of top questions you might ask yourself, such as which one can I fly into a tree, or which one can help you track you running through the woods looking like an idiot, which one can take the best pictures, the best videos. All those kind of things are going to be answered in the most brutally honest way, because I'm completely unsponsored by DJI. I get no freebies, so this is completely my opinions, and that means I can say whatever I want to, and that's great because someone has to. So let's get straight into it. This is my DJI Neo 2 versus Flip review. Let's go.
Two tiny drones, neon fight, sub 250, retro night. No sponsors here, no marketing slip, just Neo 2 versus Flip.
Okay, starting out talking about the image quality, and this is already where there's a big difference between these two drones. If you're a DJI Neo 2 fanboy or fangirl, this is going to disappoint you, because the clear winner in this one already is the Flip. But don't worry, things get more interesting later in the video, where things get more favorable for this drone. But when you're talking about just image quality, the Neo 2 has a smaller sensor than the Flip. The Flip's got a 1/1.3 inch sensor. The Neo 2 has a 1/2 inch sensor. So a bigger sensor generally means better quality. And yeah, the image quality from the Flip is just phenomenal. If you're going to buy the Flip for any reason, it's going to be for that camera, because you're basically getting the same kind of camera that you get on the DJI Mini 4 Pro, which is almost twice as much money. So it's a very good value for money on the camera for the DJI Flip. But when you're comparing image qualities, it's important to consider the lighting conditions that you're filming in. In a lot of conditions, the Neo 2 does produce fantastic results, and I'm going to try and demonstrate that. So let's have a look at some examples. Okay, so for this set of tests, the two drones, Flip and Neo 2, were placed right next to each other to film at the same time, same position, same scenario, and same setting. So this first test is quite a simple scenario. We've got the sun behind us, quite evenly lit, no particularly bright sources of light. And in this kind of scenario, I'd say both the Neo 2 and the Flip both produce decent results. So the Neo 2 does produce good results in this kind of scenario. The only thing I would say is that the Neo 2's footage probably looks a little bit more digital than I'd like, whereas the Flip produces something a bit more softer and a bit more natural looking. I've already reduced the sharpness and noise reduction down to about -0.2 for both drones, so it's already been reduced a little bit to make it less digital looking, but the Neo 2 still has that slightly processed digital sort of look about it. But beyond that, it's still good footage, both very usable, and really you can't really grovel in either case, the Flip or the Neo 2 in this scenario. Okay, so the next scenario is golden hour, sunset, the sort of time where most of us like to film for the most dramatic type of footage. With the sun being obscured by those clouds or set, you're able to film towards the source of light, so towards where the sun is, without shooting straight into the sun, which would give you a very wide dynamic range and make it very difficult for the camera to cope. But in this scenario, the sun is already obscured, and you're actually able to shoot into the sun to give your subjects a backlit sort of look, which looks really nice and more dramatic, more three-dimensional, and can produce really nice results for the Neo 2. So in this sort of scenario, the Neo 2 again can produce good results and pretty much keep up with the Flip and produce something that's quite usable. All right, now let's move on to something a bit more difficult, shooting towards the sun in daylight, not straight into the sun, but towards it. And the dynamic range you're now dealing with is extremely wide and a bit more taxing on your camera equipment. Now, if we look at the results between the Neo 2 and the Flip with its larger 1/1.3 inch sensor, you can see that the shadows have a lot more noise in the Neo 2's footage than the Flip. The Flip produces a more cleaner overall image. The Neo 2 is quite noisy in the shadows. Okay, just for comparison, here's some footage without HDR mode activated, so camera settings are completely on manual. And I've also fitted a filter just to bring that shutter speed down a little bit. And you can really see that even in this scenario, the Neo 2 just doesn't keep up with the Flip. It's also worth mentioning that the Flip does have the ability to film in D-Log M, which again will help you in this kind of scenario where you've got a wide dynamic range, and it just allows you to preserve your highlights and shadows better than if you're filming in normal color profile. So this is a real advantage for the Flip in this kind of scenario. And the last scenario, nighttime, very little light available and very tricky and demanding on your camera equipment. So this is generally where a larger sensor size will outperform a smaller sensor size or smaller sensor pixels. And that's what we're seeing here. So the Flip's 1/1.3 inch sensor is simply producing a nicer image than the Neo 2's half-inch sensor. We've got more noise in the shadows for the Neo 2 and generally less information in the shadows as well. So the image just looks nicer.
Flip looks sharp, shoots real clean. Big sensor, photo machines. Neo flies tough, tracks like glue.
Now, even though the Flip is 100 grams more heavy than the Neo 2, this drone, the Flip, does not do very well in windy conditions. It has a tendency to kind of yaw, spin a little bit, or yaw drift. So it's like the yaw authority on this is very low. And it'll also have a tendency to sometimes drift or stop moving completely, which is quite sort of not very dependable in windy conditions. The Neo 2 does fantastically well, and for being such a lightweight drone, I've been absolutely blown away how well that's coped with even stormy conditions. I wouldn't recommend flying either of these two drones in very windy conditions or storms, but if you're going to do it, climbing a mountain, seasides, very windy kind of days, then I'd say the Neo 2 is probably a better choice. Okay, let's talk about top speeds. Which one out of these two drones is the fastest? Well, on paper, the Flip in sports mode is about 10 kilometers an hour faster than the Neo 2, unless you're flying FPV manual mode for the Neo 2, in which case this one absolutely rips and kicks this one's ass. But in normal and sports modes, yeah, the Flip would normally be the faster one out of these two. That's in normal conditions. So just like when we were talking about image quality, and it's very dependent on the conditions you're filming in, it's the same with top speed. On windy days, the Flip is absolutely atrociously slow because it spends more energy kind of fighting the wind and kind of trying to correct itself than you can propel into forward motion, whereas the Neo 2 actually handles the wind better and can get more top speed in windy conditions. So you have to kind of consider how you're flying. Interestingly, I tried to do a drag race between these two to demonstrate the top speeds. That had to be done in windy conditions because, well, UK weather, it sucks a little bit. So on that windy day, that drag race, the Neo 2 absolutely kicked this one's backside. It was just much faster, much more dependable. The Flip was just constantly correcting and kind of drifting and couldn't really get any speed going. The Neo 2 kind of destroyed it. So yeah, in terms of top speed, if I was to rank these two, I'd say it's probably a draw. Ideal conditions, the Flip, but windy conditions or FPV manual mode, the Neo 2.
Wind blows hard, Flip goes on. Neo shrugs it off like bruh. Specs say Flip is fast, okay. Neo wins when skies misbehave.
Okay, let's talk about which drone's the best for tracking. Both drones are AI tracking drones, and that's really what they're made for. So they're both very good for tracking you when you're cycling, running, doing sports, all of those kind of things. That's really what their strengths are. Now, when you're in a confined environment, such as in the woods with lots of twigs and branches and tree trunks and kind of things that can hit your drone out of nowhere, that's where I'd say there's a bit of a difference. I'd say the Flip is a bit worse than the Neo 2. The Neo 2 is a bit more nimble at pushing through objects, squeezing through branches. Doesn't really get deterred when it does hit something. The Flip's a bit more clumsy and tends to kind of lose track a bit easier than the Neo 2. So in those challenging environments, I'd say the Neo 2 is probably a better choice, but they're both very good. But the winner in this one for me would have to be the DJI Neo 2. Okay, as you might know, I do enjoy doing extensive crash tests on drones, and I've done very extensive crash tests on both the Flip and the Neo 2, and both of those drones have done extremely well in those tests, crashing into trees, into a person, into a concrete wall. They're both extremely well built and very sturdy when it comes to crash resistance. Now, they're not completely invulnerable. The Flip probably came to an end a bit earlier than the Neo 2. I'd say when I started crashing that into a concrete wall, there was an electronic problem with it and an IMU error, so it just kind of gave up at that point. The Neo 2, on the other hand, I could repeatedly crash into a concrete wall, and it was only when a speed controller gave up that I had to stop those kind of tests into that concrete wall. So I'd say the Neo 2 is a little bit higher up on crash resistance than the Flip, but both are very good. But yeah, the Neo 2 is probably more tank-like than the Flip.
Please get close, crashes happen, Neo bounces, keeps on tracking, quiet woods, long flight time, Neo stretch.
All DJI drones tend to handle and fly very, very well, and these two are no exceptions. they do handle very nicely in calm conditions. Now this is where I've got to say that it's worth using the RC-N3 or RC2 controllers to get a better feel for the drone rather than the app control, which doesn't feel quite as controllable, but I appreciate that's not a luxury that we all have. Okay, let's have a look at a meaningful test, which is how well can you hit a gap with these two drones to indicate how controllable they are. The Flip hitting that big gap in these ruins was absolutely no problem. Same thing with the Neo 2, I could repeatedly do that one. Hitting that smaller kind of round gap at the top of this building was a little bit more nerve-wracking with the Flip. I mean, I did manage to do it, but it just didn't feel quite as comfortable as with the Neo 2, where I could hit that gap repeatedly. I just felt more comfortable and more in control of the drone than with the Flip. So when it comes to handling, as an all-round overview, I'd say the Neo 2 is probably more dependable than the Flip, even though the Flip is a larger drone and should really handle better. It just doesn't do very well in windy conditions. Okay, which one's the noisiest? Here's a comparison between the two drones with the decibels indicated on the screen. Okay, look at the numbers. The Flip has 5 decibels more noise, but it's a different pitch as well. So it's very subjective as to which one's more annoying or going to cause more public interest. But yeah, Neo 2, less noise, but higher pitch. Okay, flight time. I'm going to do a hover test between these two drones, but I'm not just going to take them to the point where they auto land, return to home, get to 0. No. I'm going to take them to the point where nothing, pushing up a throttle, nothing at all will stop them from landing themselves and giving up the ghost. So here we go, Neo 2 versus Flip, flight time. Okay, so the Neo 2's just had the low battery warning. I've cancelled that because I want to push it as far as I can. We're down to 15% now. Probably, well, everything's beeping, so this is quite dramatic. But funnily enough, the Neo 2 actually emits its own beeping warning when it gets to low battery, which is a bit weird. But you don't need a controller for it to tell you that it's got a low battery. So even though it's now told me it's doing a forced landing, you can still push up on the controller and stop it from landing. So I'm actually, if I don't do anything, it'll land, but you can stop it and push it that a bit further. So if you're in like a situation where you're trying to make it home, you're over water, you're trying to stop yourself from losing the drone, you can get that little bit of extra range or battery time by pushing up on the throttle controller. Now my battery time, the red sort of counter, is now at 0. It's absolute 0. There should be nothing left in the tank. It's still flying though. That's interesting. So I'm still pushing up. Up. Okay, so now it's actually doing nothing. It's completely decided. It's not giving me anything anymore, and it's landed. So that is it. Going to display the time. I think that's about 15 minutes. I'm going to display the time here. This one's still going strong. Much longer battery life on the Flip than the Neo 2. Talking about features for photography, and the Flip's the clear winner out of these two drones. You just get a lot more bang for your buck and features that are pretty much available on higher end mini drones like the Mini 5 Pro and Mini 4 Pro. You've got the ability to take AEBs, raw images, which is very important, higher resolution 48 megapixel images, only 12 megapixels on the Neo 2. You can take long exposures, and you can also do automatic panels, which you can do them manually with the Neo 2, but much easier to do them automated with something like the DJI Flip. So if you're really into photography, then this will have a lot more features to float your boat. Neo 2 is still alright though. When it comes to videography, it's a closer call between these two drones because there's not a huge difference in features between them, but I'd still have to give it to the DJI Flip because this one does have the ability to shoot in D-Log M, whereas the DJI Neo 2 can only do normal color profile, which is fine if you're just sticking things on Instagram and very basic things. But if you want to do things like color grading and more post-processing, then D-Log M will give you more flexibility. So this would be a more powerful choice for videography features and higher level videos. When it comes to features for AI tracking, the DJI Neo 2 is the clear winner because this is absolutely packed when it comes to tools to make your life easy for you when you're flying without a controller. For example, you've got this little display at the front, which you can use to not only select the mode you want to fly in, but also the parameters such as if you're following yourself, what height, what distance, what direction. All of that can be selected on the drone directly using two buttons on the side, which are dedicated for selecting and scrolling through settings, and the display, which can tell you what you're doing. In addition to that, you've also got omnidirectional obstacle detection. On the Flip, you've only got front and back. It's got LiDAR as well, but omnidirectional with these two sensors, wide angle sensors, top and bottom. That allows you to avoid obstacles all around you, which again is very useful for AI tracking modes. The mobile phone app control for this is also fantastic. Still, unfortunately, doesn't allow you to set up your camera parameters completely. So you can't set up your shutter speed and your ISO and things like that. But it does allow you to change your tracking direction. So for example, if you're tracking yourself from the front, you can press a button and it'll travel and follow you from the back very seamlessly, very smart. So yeah, AI tracking, this is the choice for you. There are a few other features which are worth mentioning on the Neo 2. This one has a larger internal memory than the Flip. The Flip's only got about 2 gigabytes, which is pretty much worthless. You get about 3 minutes of recording time, so that's not really something worth mentioning. The Neo 2 has a substantial amount of internal memory. You don't have the ability to insert an SD card, but you don't really need it because with over 40 gigabytes of internal memory, that's more than enough. You've also got the ability to fly this in FPV mode, which is a tremendous amount of fun. So you need the goggles and an FPV controller to do that, but that allows you to fly in first-person view. Manual mode, you can also hit much higher speeds than sports and normal modes, hitting over 70 kilometers an hour on windy days, stormy days, maybe even 100 kilometers an hour like I've done before. So definitely worth mentioning that this is something that you can't do on the Flip FPV. So out of these two drones, which one is best for you overall? Well, both of these are great for AI tracking. So if you're just after tracking yourself doing activities, running, cycling, skiing, those kind of things, they're both very capable and both pretty much designed for that purpose. Neo 2, I'd say, is a little bit better than the Flip, but both of those are very capable if that's what you're after. But they are also very versatile drones. They do a little bit more than just that, and that's where things get quite interesting because that's where they really differ. So to demonstrate that, what I've done is lined these up on a spectrum going from the Avatar 2 to the Mini 5 Pro and where they both sit. And really what you have to think about is which one of these two, the Mini 5 Pro or the Avatar 2, would I like to be closer to? Would I like to be closer to the Avatar 2, which allows you to fly very fast, close to the ground, bank turns, loops, dives, those kind of things? Well, then the Neo 2 would be your answer for that because that pretty much allows you to do all those things as well, in addition to being an AI tracking drone. Or would I prefer something closer to the Mini 4 or 5 Pro with a larger sensor, better image quality, better video quality, more features relating to those. Just generally a drone that allows you to take a higher quality of video content if you're just after video quality. If that's what you're after, then the Flip would be your choice. But bear in mind that on a windy day, that's pretty much null because this is not going to fly very nice and it's going to ruin your day. So really what it comes down to is looking at yourself and deciding what applications I intend to use that drone for and what's going to fit me best. They're very different drones, both are very capable in their own ways, but FPV, AI tracking, image quality, video quality, there you go. That's kind of the difference between these two. But again, don't fly this in the wind because it's horrible. So I hope you found this useful in deciding which drone's right for you. As usual, please remember to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. And until next time, happy flying, stay safe, Happy New Year, and I'll see you soon.